I talked about Kyle Pitts being a buy low last week, and I said that I really like this matchup against Jacksonville, who has given up a lot of production to tight end. So the process was right. It just so happened that it was Jonnu Smith getting the work and not Kyle Pitts. Week 4 is in the rear view, and now it is time to start looking forward to week 5 and the waiver wire pickups that you need. Alfredo Brown is on assignment this week, so we are joined by the lovely Joey Wright, who is going to help me look at these week 5 waivers here. Joey, why don't you kick us off with quarterback? There's a guy who was dropped in some leagues last week and came back with a vengeance in week 4.
Yeah, and I wasn't really recommending dropping him. Benching him, I don't think was a bad recommendation. Maybe if you played him this week, it was. After 3 weeks of like sub 20-point fantasy point games, Justin Fields showed up yesterday. 335 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 25 rushing yards, which isn't a whole lot for Justin Fields, but hey, 2.5 fantasy points. That's nice for a little padding on the floor there. Only 1 interception, so that was nice to see from him. So we definitely got a very good fantasy day from Justin Fields. The schedule the next 4 weeks for Justin Fields is really, really juicy. All 4 teams have given up over 20 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, and that includes the Chargers and Vikings, who are bottom 5 against quarterbacks. So if Fields is out there, please go pick him up and start him in the next 4 weeks. I still believe in Justin Fields. I think he can be a top 12 quarterback rest of the season. 70% of fab, I don't think is outrageous for someone like Justin Fields.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too narrative-y here, but last year he started off the season ice cold. He was the QB 31 through week 4, and then from week 5 onward, he was the QB 5. So, the QB 3. So maybe Justin Fields is just a slow starter. We heard about him wanted to play a little bit more free, weren't quite sure what that meant, and then we saw him just throwing the ball all over the field yesterday, looking very free. So, completely with you. Hopefully, if Justin Fields is out there, you can pick him up. I'm going to talk about Brock Purdy, who's available in a few more leagues, 26% to be exact. And I mean, this guy is just giving you a high floor and a high ceiling every single week. Week 1, he gave you 21 points. Week 2, he gave you 15. Week 3, he gave you 24. Week 4, he gave you 23. Now, we've talked about Brock Purdy a lot on this show, Alfredo and I, and I'm not the biggest believer in his talent, but regardless of what your thoughts are on Brock Purdy, he's in a great system surrounded by elite playmakers. Ayuk just gets schemed up to be wide open. I think they said it best yesterday. Brock Purdy didn't even really have to hit Ayuk on the money. He just throws a ball up into green space, and Ayuk tracks the ball down and makes the play. Obviously, you got CMC and Debo and Kittle doing what they do after the catch. And we saw yesterday, he's got that kind of sneaky athleticism to punch in some goal line touchdowns with his legs as well. So for me, he kind of falls into that back-end QB1, high-end QB2 tier with Geno Smith, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins. You can stream him just about every single week. And I don't think this is the last time we're going to have to talk about Brock Purdy because people aren't buying into the talent. But as long as he's available in leagues, I'm going to keep telling you to pick him up. Joey, who's the next guy you want to talk about?
Russell Wilson. He's available in 32% of leagues, not regs. I don't know what a reg is. It was his second top 12 quarterback finish of the season. I feel much safer using Russell Wilson than I did last year. Last year he was on pace. This year he's on pace, to double his touchdowns versus last year. And his completion percentage is right back on mark. Last year he was barely completing 60% of his passes. So it's starting to kind of look like the Russell Wilson of old. The schedule leading into the Broncos week, though, their bye week is daunting. If I'm on a bye week situation, I'm going to be looking elsewhere. If you've got Herbert or Geno Smith, or Deshaun Watson, we don't know what the injury is there with him. So as well as the bye week, I'm probably looking elsewhere. From a stash perspective, though, I do like Wilson a lot. He's got 2 matchups against the Chargers in the final 4 weeks of the season that could really help you in the fantasy playoffs. But if you need him for now, I might not be using a whole lot of fab to go out and grab him.
And I mean, what we always say is we like quarterbacks who have bad defenses, and the Broncos might be the worst defense out there. I'm going to talk about CJ Stroud, and we talked about CJ Stroud last week as a pickup in deep leagues. I don't even think he's a pickup in deep leagues at this point. I think in a single quarterback, 10 team, 12 team league, you can feel confident putting CJ Stroud into your starting lineup. He's had 24 plus fantasy points in 3 straight weeks, 280 plus yards, and 2 touchdowns in 3 straight weeks. He is on a trajectory akin to Patrick Mahomes, Cam Newton, Justin Herbert. It's possible that we haven't even seen his ceiling yet. I mean, he looks amazing with what he can do. He's got velocity, he's got touch, he can hit the easy throws, he can push the ball downfield. He's got some athleticism as well. We saw that touchdown that wasn't a touchdown get pulled back where he nearly stretched out at the goal line. Uh, he's not a system quarterback either. And that's what's crazy about this. We see a lot of young quarterbacks come into a team flush with playmakers and make the best of it. He's doing this with Nico Collins, who, don't get me wrong, I think is a very good player, but hasn't really done much up until this point in his career. Robert Woods, who is old and not really himself. Tank Dell had a really quiet game. He is elevating the talent around him. CJ Stroud is probably going to be inside my top 10 this week. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if he finishes the season as a QB1 in fantasy. Let's go ahead and wrap it up with quarterbacks here. Joey, who's the last guy you want to talk about?
Baker Mayfield, baby. Bucks are 3-1. Let's go. Sorry, Dave. Sorry. And sorry for all the audio.
No, I'm happy for you.
Your speakers out. Listen, I wasn't expecting it to happen. I really wasn't. Baker, best Bucks game of the year that he's had so far with the team. 246 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 31 rushing yards. Not bad at all for Baker. Still, I'm not rushing to pick him up. Bucks are on the bye week next week. And, his first 4 matchups out of the bye are all against teams not giving up 20 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. It's a pretty tough schedule. Like I mentioned, Russell Wilson's schedule, Baker's is even tougher. If you're in Superflex or Dynasty, yeah, definitely go pick Baker up. Play him when the matchups are good. But in 12-team redraft, I just don't see any priority to pick him up right now.
Yeah, and I think that's it. He's definitely a 2 quarterback super flex type of guy. I heard an interesting conversation yesterday. In Dynasty, and Joey Wright, you might be a little bit biased here, but I'm going to ask you anyway. In Dynasty leagues, would you prefer Baker Mayfield or Kenny Pickett right now?
Right at this moment, it'd be Baker because
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a tough question. I think the future ahead for Pickett's probably a little bit better than it is for Baker. I don't know. If the Bucks are 3-1, they might stick with Baker for long term.
I'm just happy Alfredo's not here because I've been gassing up Baker Mayfield nonstop on the show, and he is always the one to put the brake check on me. I know you're not going to do that today. I see you with your Bucks hat and your Bucks shirt, Joey Wright.
We'll see. Maybe I overcorrect a little bit for the Bucks because I've had the history with the Buccaneers of just like, listen, I've got the creamsicle on. I was ready for like creamsicle Bucks for them to just poop the bed this season and finish like 1-16. And like, let's go get Caleb Williams. But it seems like we're going to win some games. So I'm going to have fun while we can.
Yeah, I think you joked in the offseason in a show we did earlier in the year about getting your Caleb Williams jersey ready. And might not be time yet. Baker Mayfield, man, he's looking pretty darn good. Well, if you're watching this video, go ahead and do us a favor on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. And if you drop a comment below, we will be sure to answer that with any questions that you may have. And if you are listening on Apple right now, or any podcast version for that matter, the best thing you could do to support the show is to leave us a review. So whether you like the show or dislike the show, go ahead and leave us a review and let you know what you think. On top of that, if you leave a review, screenshot that review, email it to me at kluge@footballguys.com with any fantasy football question you have, whether it's a start-sit question, trade question, anything like that, and I will be sure to answer it for you. So leave a review, screenshot it, send it to Kluge, Kluge, @footballguys.com. Joey, let's talk about some wide receivers here. And there's a guy who has really been coming on this year. We talked about him in the offseason as a post-hype sleeper, still available in over 20% of leagues. Talk to us about Gabe Davis a little bit.
Yeah, he's available in 21% of leagues. And I know this isn't going to help the fantasy lines, but he's my daughter's preschool teacher's nephew. I think I've mentioned that before. That's not going to help you.
There you go. Wheels up. Pick him up.
Yeah. So going into last season, I was actually a little critical of him. But I like the value that he was going at a lot more this season. He's second on the team in targets. Touchdown now in 3 straight games. It's kind of padded his stat line, but he's playing on one of the best offenses in the leagues. So getting 3 straight touchdowns in 3 straight games doesn't surprise me very much. Stephon Diggs, this is like his offense. He's always going to command the lion's share of it. But Gabe Davis is going to get work while he's there. He should be rostered in all leagues, and he can be used as a flex starting next week against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why you're not plugging Gabe Davis in your lineup right now. This Bills offense is humming. Got off to a slow start in week one and has looked electric ever since. Now, I just talked about CJ Stroud as a guy you want to pick up as a quarterback in your fantasy leagues. And if you like Stroud, why wouldn't you like his wide receiver one? Nico Collins, still available in 21% of leagues, has had 14 plus fantasy points in 3 of 4 games, including 35.8 points this weekend. Absolutely exploded. Now, I've been a fan of Nico Collins for years. He's got a lot of the things that I like. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, 6'4" with 90th percentile size adjusted speed, great at contested catches, and he has become a favorite target near the end zone for CJ Stroud. He's got all the makings to be a premier wide receiver in the league right now, still available in a ton of fantasy leagues. Well, 21%, maybe not a ton, but he might be out there in your league. This isn't just a pick up, stash, and see what happens. I'm looking at Nico Collins right now as a top 20 wide receiver for the rest of the season. So if you can pick him up for whatever reason, immediately plug him into your lineup and you can bank on that production as soon as next week. Joey, talk to me about one of my favorite guys that I've been hyping up a lot this offseason, kind of the in Puka Nakua's shadow, but playing
Yeah.
pretty well himself.
Yeah, Tutu Atwell available in 26% of leagues right now, averaging 8.5 targets per game. He's actually top 15 in the NFL. Who had that on their bingo card? Tutu Atwell, top 15 in targets, like to start the season. That's crazy. My only fear with Tutu Atwell is this Cooper Cup return is kind of looming. And
Mhm.
I'm afraid that when he comes back, that's who we're going to see get hurt the most in this offense. We've already seen his receiving yardage go down as the weeks go on. He'll be a flex option next week, and what could be a shootout with the Eagles, regardless of Cooper Cup's back or not. I would just, if you have him, just keep an eye on the Cup news for sure.
Now, I want to say the words that we've been hearing out of the Rams camp. Obviously they're trying to be as optimistic as possible, but I don't know if we're going to see Cooper Cup on the field next week. It sounds like, they're saying that's the plan is for him to be there. Of course, the plan is for him to be there. They want him to be there. It's Cooper Cup,
Yeah.
but they're also talking about the return to performance not being the same as returning to the field. So it might still be some time as long as Cooper Cup isn't playing, which could be another few weeks. Who knows? I don't want to speculate too much here. There's a lot of uncertainty, but as long as Cooper Cup isn't in the field, Puka Nakua and Tutu Atwell both belong in your fantasy lineups.
Absolutely.
Now I'm going to kind of give you a twofer here. These guys are still available
Okay.
in a lot of leagues. Quentin Johnson available in 47%, and Josh Palmer available in 53%. Palmer is my preferred guy, especially in the short term. He had 8 targets and 77 yards yesterday. One of those did come on a big play at the tail end of the game, but his target share on this offense makes him an immediate wide receiver two, wide receiver three that you can plug in your lineup. Quentin Johnston is kind of the enigma here. He's a first round pick, which obviously first round picks typically have a higher hit rate than almost any other position. Rookies can take some time to warm up, and we haven't really seen much production from QJ yet. He had one nice catch yesterday, but overall had a pretty quiet performance when we were hoping to see that role grow. So Quentin Johnson is a guy still available in 47% of leagues that I think you can pick up and stash on your bench. I don't think he belongs anywhere near your fantasy lineup yet, but good things could come down the road. We even saw Justin Jefferson have a historic rookie season after getting off to a slow start. We saw it last year with Christian Watson. He didn't really kick on the afterburners until midway through the season. So Johnston does have a lot of exciting measurables. The things he can do after the catch are similar to what Mike Williams was able to do. So don't plug him into your lineup just yet. But if he does end up taking that step forward that so many first round rookies do, you'd much rather be on your team than on your opponent's team. So pick him up and stash him for now. Joey, give us another wide receiver you want to talk about.
63% of leagues, Romeo Dobbs. And he is the wide receiver so far that we've talked about that I'm actually most excited about. We saw Christian
Mhm.
Watson return to the field last week, last Thursday night, and Dobbs still led the team in targets. And that's something I think he's going to do rest of season. If you think of like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, or the Eagles with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, like that's kind of what I'm picturing for this Watson Dobbs duo here. You got a big body down the field threat, and then you've just got a possession receiver. And as long as Romeo Dobbs is pulling interceptions, he's going to be great in PPR leagues. He's a wide receiver three flex for me rest of season. Outside of a dud week 2 performance, he's averaging 18.4 fantasy points per game. So I really like him on this Packers offense, and I think it's going to improve a lot. I think what we saw Thursday night and the first half is not exactly what we're going to see week in and week out.
Yeah, and Christian Watson wasn't a snap count on Thursday, so we're going to see his role grow a little bit as he gets healthier and as he gets further removed from that hamstring. But I think that these two wide receivers could absolutely coexist. The Packers have been throwing the ball a ton. Again, not really a great defense. They look good week one against the Bears and have since kind of cooled off a little bit. So they could end up in a lot of shootouts this year. I do like both these guys, Romeo Doubs and, of course, Christian Watson. Another team that has a wide receiver too that has been stepping up is Josh Reynolds, still available in 72% of leagues. He saw 6 targets to St. Brown's 7 last year. Now, I don't want to say St. Brown has been a disappointment this year. I think that is probably overstating things a little bit this early in the season, but 7 targets is way below what we'd expect from St. Brown. But Jared Goff is just throwing the ball all over the field, kind of getting everybody involved. Sam Laporta, who I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later in this show, is also pulling a decent target share. Thursday, there was this run first game script, but Reynolds still seemed to be a big part of this offense, and Jared Goff looks his way often. I think a lot of people forget that he and Goff have that connection dating back from their time together with the Los Angeles Rams. And we saw his ceiling in week 2 when he was able to pull 2 touchdowns. So again, getting a little bit deeper here as we go through these guys. We talk about the guys that are available in a small percentage of leagues, get deeper as we work our way down the list. But Josh Reynolds could be a what the heck type of wide receiver 3 that if you're feeling desperate as we start approaching bye weeks here, you might be able to rely on Josh Reynolds, somebody who has displayed an ability to pull a decent amount of targets and also score touchdowns on this high-flying Detroit Lions offense. Back to you, Joey. Who you got?
The next guy is a big play guy. Marvin Mims, available in 82% of leagues. He's averaging 3 targets per game. And I'm going to give you a stat courtesy of Scott Barrett. Coming into the week, he was leading the NFL in yards per route run, yet he was only 200th in routes run. So Denver's just not looking his way. They didn't really look his way yesterday. There's a kind of a lot of mouths to feed in this Denver offense. He's definitely worth rostering, but I would need to see an increase in usage for him to be startable. I think you could stash him, but if they're not using him, it's tough.
And we heard that Marvin Mims was going to see his role grow a little bit this week, and unfortunately it didn't come to fruition, but big play guy every single time he gets his hand on the ball. So yeah, absolutely recommend picking up Marvin Mims. Jameson Williams is another guy that might still be out there, still available in quite a few leagues, and his suspension was shortened, so he'll be back as soon as next week. Unfortunately, the news about his suspension being shortened didn't come out until after Thursday night's game when he was locked on your waiver wires, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fab getting thrown around on Jameson Williams this week. I was a huge fan of his coming into the league, just blazing speed. The Lions traded up to draft him 12th overall. In that draft, he was drafted immediately behind Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who have both shown plenty of NFL success. Alfredo and I joke around all the time about his touches last year, but it seemed like every time he touched the ball, it was a huge play, either scoring a touchdown, getting called back on a penalty, whatever it may be. He is a big play waiting to happen whenever he gets the ball in his hands. I've since cooled off a little bit. We've got the suspension, injuries, reports about a lot of drops in training camp, some character concerns that we've heard about with him getting in fights with teammates and whatnot, but you cannot deny his ceiling on this pass-first offense. So Josh Reynolds is probably the safer play in the interim, but Jameson Williams is a guy worth a stash that could provide huge upside down the stretch. Man, we saw Michael Wilson yesterday break out in a huge way. Joey, everybody's wondering how much they should be spending on Michael Wilson, if he's the real deal. Talk to us a little bit, because he is almost assuredly available in your fantasy league.
Yeah, available in 99% of leagues right now. 7 receptions, 76 yards, and not 1, 2 touchdowns. He moved up to 3rd on the team in targets and receptions. And the Cardinals are competing. They're not just rolling over like a lot of people were expecting them to do. And when I first saw his stat line, I saw some of the game and I saw the touchdowns. I was watching Red Zone. But when I went back to look at the game, I just thought, because Hollywood probably, he's come in the game questionable. So it's probably a product of that. No, Hollywood had a great game too. So I think Wilson really has carved out a role on this offense. I think he's worth a roster spot in most 12-team leagues. I would spend 30 to 40% of your fab if you have it on him. I really do believe in his talent.
And he was a guy that a lot of film guys really liked. He really displayed a lot of fun things on film, and a lot of people were beating the drum for him as a deep dynasty stash, but I don't think anybody expected him as early as week 4 to be dominating like this. And I think one of the biggest surprises, because you talked about it, Hollywood Brown still had a good game as well. I think the big
Yeah.
surprise here is that Joshua Dobbs is able to lead a pretty good offense.
Hmm.
Another big surprise is that Jonathan Gannon, one of the most scrutinized head coaching hires this offseason, has really done a great job with what he's got in Arizona. So I agree. I think 30% is about what you should be spending on Michael Wilson. Why not? His ceiling's only going to get higher once Kyler Murray returns.
Hmm.
I want to talk about Nick Westbrook Akine, and this is a guy who just keeps putting up points year after year after year. I don't know when we're going to start putting some respect on his name, but he probably deserves it at this point. No Traylon Burks in week 4, and Nick Westbrook Akine pulled the same amount of targets as DeAndre Hopkins. He's been on the team for a while. He's displayed a strong rapport with Ryan Tannehill. He's got 2 touchdowns on the year. Now, this guy's available in as many leagues as Michael Wilson. I'm not recommending that you drop 30% of your fab on Nick Westbrook Akine, but in your deeper leagues, he is worth a stash as long as Traylon Burks is out. There's a lot of wide receivers that are injured right now. Some guys are hurting. So if you're in a 14 team or more league and you need to start 3+ wide receivers, if you got two plus flex spots, Nick Westbrook Akine, pull some targets in this kind of boring Tennessee Titans offense, but has been decent with the opportunity he's seen over the last couple of years. Joey, I don't think I realized when we were prepping for this show, but we really, really like the Detroit Lions, don't we? I talked about a few already. We got some more on the show sheet, and you're going to talk about another guy on the Lions right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting work. Khalif Raymond, he's available in 99% of leagues as well. Dave kind of alluded Jameson Williams is heading, yeah, Jameson Williams is heading back a week earlier than we expected. Khalif Raymond kind of becomes the 5th on the team in targets now. But if Williams has a slow start to the season, Raymond could be just as involved as he has been all season. Um, I'm I'm not hoping for an injury. I think there would need to be an injury or maybe even a trade with Raymond for there to be complete relevance. But if you're in a deep league, you can definitely put him on your bench and just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, he also had a big touchdown on Thursday night that was called back on a penalty. So, yeah, like you said, kind of the 5th option in this offense. But like I said earlier, Jared Goff is just spreading the ball all over the place. So, if we want to buy into these offenses where there's a lot of offensive production, and the Detroit Lions have it. The last wide receiver we're going to talk about here, Trey Palmer, available in 99% of leagues. Again, we are talking about the very deep guys right now. These might be your dynasty stashes more than anything else. Palmer is a rookie who slid into the 6th round, but has blazing speed, ran a 4.33 40-yard dash, and he's already got 2 touchdowns this year. The targets haven't really been there, but we saw Mike Evans go down with a hamstring injury yesterday. Best case scenario is that he misses a game or two, but there is a possibility, as we've seen with Cooper Kupp and as we've seen with Deontay Johnson, once these wide receivers get up into that 28, 29, 30 years old, a hamstring injury could land these guys on IR. So if he ends up missing, a decent amount of time, I think Trey Palmer is worth again, kind of wide receiver 3, flex 2, getting real deep in the trenches here, but worth a streamer in some of your deeper leagues as long as Mike Evans misses. Now we've got some tight ends to talk about, and Joey, this is always a fun part because tight ends, we've been talking about the same guys week after week, Alfredo and I, and these guys still aren't getting picked up for whatever reason. People get married to their priors, the guy that they draft, they just want to keep all season long, but there's some tight ends here that we've talked about week after week, and we're going to continue talking about. I'm going to start us off here with
Okay.
Sam Laporta. He is the tight end 2 on the year, despite only scoring 1 touchdown. Like, usually at this point in the season, when you see a tight end way up those ranks, it is inflated by a handful of touchdowns. Not Sam Laporta. He is averaging nearly 7 targets per game through his first 4 NFL starts, with 5+ in every single matchup. I think Kelsey, Andrews, and Hawkinson are probably in a tier of their own, but Laporta fits into that Kittle Waller tier right behind them, and he might sit atop it. You don't have to twist my arm to tell me that Sam Laporta is the tight end 3 or the tight end 4 for the rest of the season. Not only is he a must add if he's still available, which he is in 17% of leagues, he is a must start every single week. Would it surprise you one bit, Joey, if Sam Laporta ends up finishing second on this team in targets behind Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Not at all. I absolutely love Sam Laporta this season. You mentioned Kittle and Waller that he's in a tier with them. I'd rather have him on my team right now than Kittle or Waller, honestly. With the Daniel Jones concerns, And with Kittle, I mean, he didn't have a great game yesterday. Laporta, week in and week out, is proving it on the field. I think maybe of all the options today, he would be my priority if he's on my waiver wire. Actually, not maybe. It's definite. He would be my
Yeah.
priority.
If he's still out there for whatever reason, I think he's the type of guy that you completely empty your fab. Whatever you have left, you
Mhm.
drop on Sam Laporta because he is giving you such a huge advantage. It's very rare to stumble into an elite tight end. We saw this a few years ago with Dallas Goddard. I mean, it's very, very rare that you can just pick a guy up off the waiver wire, plug him in as a top three tight end. That's what you are likely getting with Sam Laporta. So if he's available, this is the guy that you just open it up. Whatever you've got, you spend on Sam Laporta, and you plug him into your tight end your tight end slot every single week.
Absolutely.
Joey, this is another guy that I can't believe we're still talking about. Talked about him
Yeah.
after week one, talked about him after week two, talked about him after week three. Here we are after week four, once again telling you to pick up.
Zach Ertz. I mean, coming into the season, I was overlooking Zach Ertz. I'll be completely honest. I thought we were going to see this passing of the
Well,
torch.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I
Yeah.
think it was okay to overlook Zach Ertz this
Okay.
offseason. 33 years old, coming off an
Yeah.
ACL tear. I have long been a Zach Ertz fan, and I wanted nothing to do with him in drafts this year, but things done changed. Talk to us about
Yeah.
it.
No, I thought there was going to be a passing the torch to Trey McBride, but Ertz is
Hmm.
second on the team in targets. Like I mentioned, with Michael Wilson, this Cardinals team is competing. They're not rolling over. 3 out of the last 4 weeks, 8 targets per game. The only knock that I see on Zach Ertz right now is his red zone work. They're not really utilizing him in the red zone. Maybe because the Cardinals are not getting down there very much, but still, he's not getting a whole lot of red zone work. And any tight end, you definitely want to see them get that. He's got a really nice matchup in week 5, though, against the Falcons, who the last 2 seasons have really struggled against tight ends. So if I am streaming tight end, Zach Ertz is definitely someone that I'm looking at this week.
And I will say he did get a pass attempt that came his way in the end zone yesterday, and it went through his hands. And you saw after the play him like looking at his hands, like, why have you betrayed me? Like as sure-handed as they come, and it just slipped right through his fingertips. And he caught that pass yesterday. He'd be coming off an 18-point outing. So
Mhm.
again, doesn't have the insane yards after the catch ability, doesn't have the athleticism you like to see in elite tight end, but the targets are there, and you can't deny it. He's pulling targets at a higher rate than almost any tight end in the league. I'm going to talk about Gerald Everett here, and I already talked about Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnston a little bit earlier, but we are looking right now at Keenan Allen sitting atop this depth chart, and we don't really know who the number 2 guy is. Just as easily as it could be Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnson, it could also be Gerald Everett. Now, we didn't see a whole lot yesterday, and I was really hoping that we'd see him step up in this first game without Mike Williams. But I really like Gerald Everett for what he brings to the table. Former second round pick. He's got elite measurables across the board with his athleticism, speed, strength, burst, size, all of those fun things. So even though he's coming off a quiet week 4, he's a guy that I am okay picking up, maybe even more than stashing. He is going to fit inside my top 12 this week because of the opportunity there. So Gerald Everett is a guy still available in 2 out of 3 leagues. I'm a-okay picking him up and plugging him in if you're hurting at the tight end spot.
Now, do we know what's up with Donald Parham? I know he was injured in the game yesterday. Did he
They're
come
saying a
back in?
wrist injury. He did
Okay.
not come back in. They're saying a possible wrist. I've seen some people, it's so tough with these injury doctors. I've seen some people speculate that it was a broken wrist, that kind of sounding the alarms. I don't want to get too concerned about that. Parham has been the guy near the red zone. I would prefer the guy who's pulling the targets, which has been Gerald Everett, but
Oh,
Donald Parham, absolutely worth it in deeper leagues as well. Again, this is just a pass offense that we want to be
yeah.
buying into. The Los Angeles Chargers are throwing the ball a ton. Justin Herbert looks as good as ever out there with his bionic arm splint on yesterday, still playing the game. He's not going to miss any time. He's going to be just fine. So yeah, we want to buy into this Chargers offense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was saying I'm a little bit more in on Everett if there's something wrong with Parham. Just more work for
Absolutely.
him. So yeah.
Yep. Now talk to another guy. We have deemed him. Alfredo hates this one. So again, I get to have all my fun on this show without Alfredo here. Talk to
This
us
is
about
great.
Jake Fergalicious.
I like that Fergalicious. Listen, 7 targets in 3 out of the last
Yep.
4 games. He's ahead of Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks in targets this season on the Cowboys offense.
Mhm.
If you think of historically, the Cowboys tight end is kind of always a nice fantasy piece to have on your roster. His playoff schedule features 3 of the worst teams against tight ends, so he might be more of like a stash towards the end of the season. But if he's getting 7 targets in most of these games that he's out there, at tight end, you can definitely roll him out there when the matchups are right. Um, if you need to play him now, I think the numbers will be just fine for him.
Yeah, talked about him as my start of the week last week, and 7 catches, 7 targets, 77 yards. And this blows my mind. He leads the NFL in red zone targets. Not just leads tight ends, leads the NFL more than every wide receiver, more than every running back. When they get inside the 20, they are looking Ferguson's way. He got 2 more red zone targets yesterday. Just a matter of time before those start converting. Hate to see 12 red zone targets and just
Yeah.
1 touchdown, but they will come, chase the usage, and the production will follow. Now, again, we're getting super deep with these last 2 guys that we're going to talk about here. I am going to talk about Mo Alley Cox. Big Mo, we've loved him for years. Richardson looks like the real deal. I mean, this is the first show where we haven't gone out and said to pick up Anthony Richardson because at this point he is rostered in every single league. But Mo Alley Cox caught a big touchdown yesterday. Now, targets aren't really there, but he is a big play guy on what looks like it's going to be a big offense. So this is, in your two tight end leagues. This is in your 14, 16, 18 team leagues. I'm not recommending that you plug Mo Alley Cox in your lineup, but still available in almost every single league out there. If you're really, really hurting at tight end, we do like the touchdown upside and the big play upside for Mo Alley Cox. Joey, I can't believe we're recommending this guy next, but again, deep leagues here. Talk to us about Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, I gave you a gross Marvin Mims stat. I'm gonna give you a gross Jonnu Smith stat. Kyle Pitts, 21 targets, 11 receptions, 121 yards. Jonnu Smith, 20 targets, 15 receptions, and 179 yards. If they played on different teams, that'd just be kind of sad. But because they play on the same team, it's even more sad. Smith's been involved, technically just as much as Kyle Pitts, and that's not how we drafted it to be. It's kind of impossible to know when to play him, though. But getting 6 or more targets 3 straight weeks, I think we got to at least take a look at him in deep leagues. At no point in his career has he ever recorded 3 games in a row with 6 targets, though. So I'm not sure how sustainable this is for him. But if you need the tight end help, he's there.
Yeah, I talked about Kyle Pitts being a buy low last week, and I said that I really like this matchup against Jacksonville, who has given up a lot of production to tight end. So the process was right. It just so happened that it was Jonnu Smith getting the work and not Kyle Pitts. Jonnu Smith is a guy that we've liked for years, has never really been able to put it together over a full season. But yeah, in your deep leagues, go ahead and pick him up, see what happens. That'll do it for today. We talked about quarterbacks, we talked about wide receivers, we talked about tight ends, but wait, there's more. You just got to find it over on the audio side of this show. So we'll have a link in the YouTube description below. We're going to talk about everybody's favorite position, running backs. We've got 13 running backs that you need to add before week 5. So head to the link below. Check us out in the audio version. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back tomorrow with Daniel Harms as we talk about our tiers and rankings. Thanks for tuning in.